Motorweek, television's automotive magazine.
Finally, that long-awaited two-seater sports car from Pontiac is going to come. Now, we've been calling that thing the P car, but they've come up with a new name for it, and it's called the Fiero, and that means very proud in Italian. Now, the first model is going to be called the Fiero 2M4, and that's simple, two-seat, mid-engine, four-cylinder. Now, look for that last number to change depending on the engine configuration.
Yeah, that's going to be out next fall as an 84 model.
That's right.
Correct? Not the Firebird 2?
No.
I can't say I'm not disappointed. Okay, Joyce, keep on spying. Thanks very much. You know, it's not easy to be different in a large corporation like General Motors. As proof, take our four-wheeled friend here, the Pontiac Fiero 2M4. It was over 5 years before the Fiero reached production, nearly twice as long as usual for a new design. Part of that reason, Pontiac had to sell the Fiero to GM Brass, not as a sports car, but as a very small, you see it's less than 13.5 feet long, two-seat commuter car that just happens to be fun to drive. But during the course of development, something strange happened. The energy crisis was officially forgotten. So while the base version still fits that high-mileage image, make no mistake about it, this is a sports car. And the full sporty pretensions of the design can now be openly explored, which is just what we're going to do. First, the translation. In Italian-American, Fiero 2M4 means a very proud, two-body, mid-mounted engine, four-cylinder sweetheart. And how sweet it is when it comes to handling. The near-perfect placement of the engine is just behind the driver, but just ahead of the rear wheels. That makes the Fiero feel like it's on rails as it twists around a fast bend. The stiffer springs and shocks of the handling package and sticky 14-inch Eagle GT tires are standard on this up-level SE model. So wet-dry adhesion is excellent and spins almost impossible. The Fiero is relatively heavy, 2,590 pounds, and its engine output is only 92 horsepower and 134 pounds of torque. Even with those figures, its average speed through our tight slalom was 45 miles an hour. Most impressive. The F in Fiero must stand for flat, since body roll is almost unnoticed by either the driver or the eye. While moderate understeer is present, the back end has no nervous traits. The only drawback to all this fun is the very slow steering. The rack and pinion system has no power assist. It takes a lot of steering wheel work to maneuver a narrow course. Since the Fiero comes with only a 4-speed manual or 3-speed automatic, there aren't enough gears to match the engine's modest output when you get into trouble, like trying to power out of a high-speed skid. So the Fiero is best driven by careful use of the 4-wheel disc brakes and a heavy throttle. But then, isn't that how you always drove a real sports car? Aside from that, Motorweek found the available power quite adequate. Acceleration times were above average for modern cars. 0 to 60 came in at 11.2 seconds. You do run through first gear rapidly, but a time of 9.1 seconds over a 500-foot on-ramp course certainly qualifies as quick. It's no slouch in the 40 to 55 mile per hour passing time either, 4.5 seconds. Smooth starts are hard to come by, since you have to master the slap-engaging clutch. But once rolling, we again awarded a good show for a 17.6-second, 74 mile per hour quarter mile. Even better straight-line performance will come when a V6 is added next year, and we'll add another accolade for Fiero brakes. While a bit touchy, with a tendency for the rear wheels to lock up first, all in all, they're very secure. Fade is modest and stops were straight, with a very short average of 125 feet from 55 miles per hour. The pedal was firm and made it easy for the driver to know just how hard to push for any given situation. We'd expect only 2 complaints from everyday drivers. First, the very heavy, low-speed steering effort, and second, the extremely wide 40-foot turning diameter. all potential owners of slight build might wish to put in a few Charles Atlas sessions first. And for that matter, the Fiero's Porsche look-alike emblem does imply that the first year's 85,000 units aren't for everyone. But if you do apply, you'll not only get a slick car to drive, but one that's slick-looking too. The all-plastic body panels were smooth with excellent fit and finish. To protect against minor dings, the front fenders are flexible and have the same type paint as the harder panels. This reduces the problem of irregular fading found on cars using pliable plastic in the past. Almost everything on the Fiero has been given careful attention and compromises kept to a minimum. The interior is first-rate. It feels much roomier than most sports cars, including the much larger Corvette. Seats are very comfy, with stereo speakers located in each headrest. Instrumentation is nearly complete and highly legible. Everything is electronic, including the speedometer. And in the small favors department, they give you a dial rather than the ubiquitous digital face. Thank you, Pontiac. And thanks for making the left-hand parking brake lever always rest in a down position. At least crawling into the low cockpit is no more difficult than it has to be. Another kudo for placing the gear shift lever high on the console, so your arm can easily pivot to and from the wheel. Now, if they can only do something about the long, stiff shift linkage, always a problem in mid-engine cars. Pontiac had also better instruct their dealers on how to show the best use of the Fiero's small but deceptively good cargo space. The deep cavity behind the engine takes one hard-sided three-suiter, or a few soft bags. In fact, Pontiac will offer a special set of Fiero luggage as an option. And duffers will be glad to know that the main design criteria for the Fiero's short if wide bay was accommodation of 2 standard golf bags. After a day on the greens, you can change into your dress blazer, kept in a garment bag behind the seats. Now, if they'd only included something to hang it on. You might be able to squeeze it under the front bay along with the radiator, spare tire, and braking components. The engine and transaxle, the 2.5-liter Iron Duke unit, is housed transversely directly behind the cockpit. It looks like a devil to service, but it's actually, again, the most accessible mid-engine installation yet devised. Most major components are reachable from both above and below the car. Such attention to servicing is also noticeable in the front wishbone suspension. The shocks are offset towards the rear rather than inside the coil springs for quick and easy change. While we have approached the Fiero as a sports car, Pontiac has tried to keep it faithful to the original commuter car image. Mileage ratings are high, 27 city and 48 highway. However, our very young test sample never exceeded 29. With age, we would expect between 35 and 40 in everyday driving. But if the Fiero is so well conceived and executed, it must also cost a bundle, right? Well, like life, it's all relative and depends on what you want. Using loads of off-the-shelf parts, let Pontiac price the base version at $1 under $8,000. The fully decked-out price is under $12 grand. So with great handling and adequate power, the beautifully styled Pontiac Fiero 2M4 has got to be the enthusiastic commuter's bargain of the year. Let's see what Pontiac has done for its newest performer, the sassy mid-engine Fiero. With last year's Indy Pace Car Aero styling package, a new Fiero GT comes up to the line. With rocker panel extensions and the optional rear spoiler, this latest Fiero looks the part of a high-velocity, pavement-gripping sports car. But are the looks deceiving? Well, not if the 4-outlet twin exhaust pipes mean what they should. A V6 option is now available on all Fieros. It'll cost you $522 on most models, and it's standard equipment on the $14,542 Fiero GT. It's a multi-port fuel-injected 2.8-liter unit like the 6000 STEs, but thanks to the Fiero's lower exhaust system restriction, it generates 140 horsepower and 170 pounds of torque. The standard transmission for the V6 is the 4-speed manual we last saw in Chevy's Citation X11. but it was the added cost 3-speed automatic that came in our Fiero GT test car, and it arrived just in time for a trip to Pennsylvania's Pocono International Raceway. On Pocono's high bank 2.5-mile tri-oval, we clocked our Fiero GT at 110, with a top speed probably nearer 115. Now that's about a 10% gain over the 4-cylinder 4-speed Fiero SE that we tested last year. With far more low and mid-range torque, acceleration times also improved. A 0 to 60 sprint was 15% faster at 9.3 seconds. With a manual, it might be more like 8.3. And the quarter mile that we rated good in the original Fiero is now downright quick at 16.7 seconds and 80 miles per hour. But with 2,700 V6 equipped pounds to pull around, our Fiero GT seemed heavier and slower than our clocks indicated. That weight, however, and the 60 Series Eagle GT tires, along with a slight tweaking of the Fiero's performance suspension, have made this a better balanced sports car. On Pocono's infield road course, the Fiero GT exhibited more front tire scrub than expected, but precise throttle adjustments gave excellent control. Into a corner too fast, just back off the gas and the rear will swing out for the turn. Then get back on the throttle and the rear wheels will continue to push the nose along the proper course. Negatives we noticed, well, major expansion joints produced a lot of front to rear hop, and the manual rack and pinion steering, while fine at speed, is very heavy for everyday around-town use. The brakes also faded more than we would have liked, although an overall stopping distance of 130 feet from 55 is a good result. So while the short history of the Fiero has been bright and the additions for 85 well received, Pontiac still has much more in store for future Fieros. Next year, 15-inch wheels will come with the top tire option, and a 5-speed manual will be optional with the V6. In 87, look for a new suspension that should be more bump resistant, and a novel form of power assist to reduce low-speed steering effort. As time drives on, so does car design, and Pontiac, with the Fiero and the 6000 STE, seems determined to arrive ahead of the others. Which brings us to 1986 and a half and the $12,875 Fiero GT. Last year's GT brought V6 power to the Fiero, but Pontiac and lots of performance car enthusiasts felt the car needed another injection of sportiness. So Pontiac gave the Fiero GT, and only the GT, a whole new look with clear sailplane quarter panels and a Firebird look-alike tail end. But bodywork is a matter of taste. Has the Fiero GT improved as a sports car? Well, inside, the answer is yes, even though changes are few. Instrumentation has been upgraded. The temperature gauge is now located in the center of the instrument cluster, and it's joined by an oil pressure gauge and voltmeter on top of the center console. They're not in the direct line of sight, but they also have large warning lights built in just to get your attention. Our car's 4-speed manual shifter was the most precise we'd found in any Fiero yet, but the lever is still too tall and positioned too far back for most drivers. And that long-awaited 5-speed manual, well, it's still not ready for production. But the Fiero's port-injected 2.8-liter V6 has plenty of power, and 4 gears seem quite sufficient, thank you. That engine was added last year. But since this year's GT has gained a few pounds, thanks to the extra skin, acceleration times were just slightly slower. It's still pretty quick. Quarter-mile time was 16.2 seconds at 85 miles per hour. Likewise, 0 to 60, 8.5 seconds. The 2.8 V6 is one of our favorites for its smoothness, low RPM power, and especially for its lively exhaust notes, something a good sports car really should have. And Pontiac must have had that in mind when they upgraded the GT's suspension. In addition to different shock valving and spring rates, they added 15-inch tires, 205/60s at the front, 215/60s at the rear. But we're sorry to say it didn't really improve the Fiero's handling much. The steering is still too heavy, and there's a lot of initial plow when cutting into a turn. In the slalom, the Fiero GT does anything but encourage you to drive faster.